This Pendle Council livestream will start in just a few minutes. You can view tonight's meeting agenda by visiting pendle.gov.uk/meetings, where the upcoming meeting notes are available to view. We will go live very soon. All of the future Pendle meeting agendas, as well as the previous meeting reports and minutes, can be viewed on the Council website at pendle.gov.uk/meetings. Tonight's meeting will start shortly.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Executive Committee meeting. My name is Asjad Mahmood. I'm leader of Pendle Council and also the chairman of this Executive Committee. First of all, can I welcome Lawrence Conway, who is our interim chief executive, who's very experienced, very knowledgeable, and is, if I can say, he's an expert in one of the key things that we'll be doing over the next couple of years and over the next couple of months, especially with the local government reorganisation. If we'll do a short introduction, going to my left, please.
Hi, my name is Lawrence Conway, Interim Chief Executive. Good evening, I'm Philip Spur, Director of Police.
Gemma Louise Wells, Head of Finance.
Philip Kirby, Head of Property and Engineering.
And Peter Gregory from Property.
Councillor Dorothy Lord, representing Horsefield and Waterside.
David Whip, I'm leader of the Liberal Democrat group.
Councillor Martin Stone, representing Barrowfold and Pendleside.
Councillor David Kevin Price from Borders and Foulridge.
Sarah Kaylin Price, same ward.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. Councillor Mohammed Hanif. Paul Preston, Democratic Services Manager.
Howard Culshaw, Head of Legal Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer.
Sarah Aston-Wood, Head of Policy and Commissioning.
Wayne Forest Housing Needs Manager.
Neil Watson, Assistant Director for Planning.
Ryan Gifford, Economic Growth Unit.
Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is a declaration of interest. Councillor Wick.
Can I declare an interest on item, I'll have to look it up. Item 17, the Pendle Rise CPO as a director of the Pembroke joint venture.
Larry?
Personal, it's not
Yeah.
a prejudicial,
Education.
prejudicial pecuniary one.
Yeah, same here with me as well. Yeah, that we noted. I've got apologies from Councillor Zaffarali. Any public question time? I don't think there are any members of the public here. Minutes of the previous meeting. Second those. That's good. Just got an emergency item on local government reorganisation. And just moving this item forward, and the first one on the agenda. And this is this report is in front of us, and it was emailed as well this afternoon. It's basically about reflecting the thoughts and what we approved at the full council meeting on Monday. It's basically a covering letter, sets out our priorities, and Lawrence will go in a bit more detail and talk about it.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, members. Following the council meeting on Monday, I was tasked with writing a covering letter that outlined all of the points that the council wished to make in the letter, the covering letter that Pendle Borough Council would send to the Minister as a supplement to the All Lancashire Joint Leaders letter. I drafted a letter. I was very grateful that those group leaders that were able to respond did respond, and in front of you is the letter as set out. And if the executive are happy, the recommendations are in front of them, then I have my computer in front of me ready to press the send button should you wish me to do so. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Lawrence. And as I'm happy to move the recommendation to send this letter, covering letter, yeah. Seconder? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm content with the content of the letter. Could I ask, I understand that there were attempts to redraft the draft of the Pan Lancashire letter, which had revisions before we saw it on Monday evening, and I understand that there's been requests for further revisions since. Could I just ask what's happened with that, if at all, anything?
Good question, Lawrence.
And I don't think Lawrence needs to stand up, Chair.
Oh, well, I'm just used to that. Thank you. So everybody can hear me.
That's better, actually.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. There was another letter that was received. There was very few differences from the letter that members had seen, apart from the addition of another map which had the outline of the county council, its geographical outline, but there were no other material changes to that letter.
Thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favour? Thank you. So that's carried. Next item is the corporate plan refresh. I mean, I'm happy to move that as set out. And it is quite detailed again. Information there in the appendix. Second it. Sarah, yeah.
It's directed mainly to Philip. So it was great to see on page 3 the section for the climate emergency, and that obviously will help us when we come around again to be judged on our scorecard. However, may I put in 2 new bullet points, because I think that these are really critical things that we actually do and are doing, i.e. we've actually won a grant for this, or I say we, Victor has won a grant for this. So the first one, which I think is the most important, is signpost residents and businesses towards options for best value, this is just me extemporising, best value insulation to make old houses resilient, and also green technology solutions. So it's sort of two things there. And then the second bullet point is to work with charities and partner organisations to help them to become more resilient by applying for the plethora of green grants that are out there. So, for example, Victor at the moment is helping Combe Town Council.
Yeah, I've got a question, and then I'll comment on what Sarah just said. Just in terms of the Citizens Club on page 1, we're looking at scoping options, and I know the due date is March 2026. Can somebody just update us where we are up to with that?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. At this moment in time, we are still talking to various community organisations about their aspirations and how we can best meet their aspirations. I think it's fair to say that this building was looked at as one of the options for a citizens hub to be based in central Nelson, but obviously space would need to be freed, which then plays into kind of the council's accommodation requirements going forward. So I think we're still in the foothills of finding a solution and a way forward. We're very keen to get a citizens hub somewhere in the centre of Nelson, but we don't have a defined space at this moment in time.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. Yeah, 2 points from me. Priority 1, bullet point number 1. We've obviously gone through the budget review and there were lots of ups and downs in numbers, but we ended up with a £9.5 million deficit for the forthcoming year, 498 I think. So it talks about a 3-year forecast here, so when do we get the first chance to see a 3-year forecast?
That's something, you know, that work shows it's a work in progress. And I think the key factor is that, you know, we need a long-term settlement from the government, and been lobbying and say mentioning it at every opportunity. I think if we get that 3-year settlement, then you've got a bit more sustainability. We can plan ahead a lot better. So it's kind of work in progress.
I'm just thinking in particular, of course, we talked about local government coming up in 2028, and obviously that fits quite nicely for a 3-year forecast. Yeah. So hopefully we'll go in there still alive and still healthy with, you know, our hearts beating, etc. Yeah. So when that emerges, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like.
And to be honest with you, I think Pendlebury Council is in a lot better, healthier position than many of our other Lancashire authorities. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the previous point, just a comment on the Citizens Hub. I noticed Sarah refers to long-term town plan funding, which is now planned for neighbourhoods, so just an amendment that I'll include for that, which is still available to look at as an option. And just talking of amendments in the recommendation, apologies actually say that the executive notes the corporate plan refresh. Currently it says the council, which was an oversight, so apologies for that.
That's right. So all those in favour?
Could I do my second one, sorry?
Yeah, sure.
It's probably more directed to Ryan, I think, on this one. On priority 3, fourth from the bottom, we've got the Barnoldswick, Hone and Newby master plans. So we obviously put a lot of work into those. They've been through extensive review, public awareness, etc., and consultation. So what are the plans to get those sort of action points that have been identified, get some resources behind them, get some fundraising, and get the shovel-ready projects lined up and delivered?
We are trying to align projects where funding comes available, so we're currently speaking with such as the Lancashire Levy Programme, that EV charge points, and we are looking at master plans where the priority areas are there. We've got UK SPF funds coming through, where again, we're looking at where those can be aligned with, for example, with master plans.
Okay, all right.
Steer up policy-wise.
Okay, Philip?
No, I was just going to say, Chair, obviously Councillor Coleman Price has made a couple of suggestions there, but it's clearly an executive decision whether you wish to include those or not. So I just didn't want to lose those recommendations or those suggestions.
That's fine. Sarah?
If we turn to page 4, bottom of, it says other schemes for development. And actually there are quite a few other schemes for development. And I wrote a little list here of, River Street and Shore Street and different places in Cone that I know of. But perhaps it would be wrong to put a list just to say other sites as available or whatever, just to cover those other places, because it's more than just 3.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. My view is that this is wholly inadequate. We need to have a radical rethink of our priorities. The writing is on the wall, not literally perhaps, but the writing is on the wall in Mr Conway's office, and it's local government reorganisation and a timetable. Now, a lot of these corporate priorities were thought of before local government reorganisation was introduced by the new government. And as a consequence, half of them are either out of date or are actually counter to what the Borough Council should now be doing. And I've put a motion in for next week's council meeting that says that we need, I'm paraphrasing, but it says we need to have that radical rethink. And we've had these comments here about climate emergency scorecard, getting the climate emergency officer to help third-party organisations, so on and so on and so forth. Councillor David Coleman Price talks about the 3-year forecast and the master plans for Barnoldswick, Con and Earby. And then Sarah comes and speaks about other schemes for development. But in each of these cases, there might be an important little thing, might be slightly more important than a little thing, but we need to look at the whole. And given the circumstances of 3 years before literally Pendle is no more, we have to, and I've used the word give our head a wobble more than once, but we have to give our corporate head a wobble to ensure that what we're actually doing and what we're telling all our officers, our managers and the staff who are working on these programmes is, look, in the circumstances we need to shift stuff. And there's some other stuff on tonight's agenda which we're not setting a stall out to actually address the world in which we now live. We're actually fighting the last war, as it were, and we've got to get a grasp of that. One or two things, just picking up the detail really, but Councillor David Coleman Price talks about the budget gap. Well, of course, if the council had listened to my group and accepted the use of 100% extended producer responsibility, there would have been a very small gap between the income and the expenditure. The fact is that the balance of that EPR funding has gone into reserves, and it's equal, it's even Stevens, isn't it? If it's gone into reserves, it's there in order to help bridge the budget gap. If we'd have used it in the first place, there wouldn't have been a budget gap that was as large as what it appears to be. So I think there's loads of stuff that we could talk about the detail, but honestly, we need to get a grasp of, you know, the big picture, and the corporate priorities need to be reframed, as the motion to next week's council meeting says, as a matter of urgency, so that we are concentrating on the right things and not putting time, effort, time, effort and money into stuff that it's all nice to do, but given 3 years, you know, I'm thinking Bowie, you know, we've got 3 years. Sorry, I won't sing anymore. You get me drift?
Thank you for that. Yeah. I won't comment. But yeah,
Chairman, I know what Councillor David Whipple is saying, but if you look at, for example, the timelines on these, none of them go past 2026, and yeah, there's the big picture in 2028, but that doesn't mean that we just stop still and divert all resources, energy and money to the big bang in 2028, if indeed it happens, because we've been here before in terms of local government reorganisation and elected mayors for the last 10 or 15 years, and we've been told by civil servants from Westminster to say, right, it's going to happen next year, and then lo and behold, something else comes up. So I think in terms of, I mean, what council decides next week in terms of the motion, council will decide, and if council passes that motion tabled by councillor Wade, obviously the council will have to have a rethink, but I think in terms of the corporate plans, there's a lot of good things in this which need to continue, and I think if we start diverting officer time away from those, people out there will say, well, 3 years to them is a long time. I understand 3 years isn't a long time in local government, but the fact is that services still need to continue. We still need to do things for the next 3 years. We can't just stop still and ask, for example, some of our talented officers that are here tonight and those that are not, to suddenly start focusing on 2028, because you never know, it might never happen.
Fair enough, yeah. So I think at this stage we'll note what's been proposed by Sarah, but we approve the original recommendation and the report as set out. I'm happy to do that. All those in favour? Thank you. The next item is community cohesion strategy and community engagement strategy. Do you want to, Sarah?
Thank you. So we shared with you both a new community cohesion strategy, which again was an action within the corporate plan from last year, and also a community engagement strategy which replaces what was our community engagement framework. So we presented them to you. It's really to ensure that the community engagement and cohesion agenda remains relevant, inclusive and aligned with our long-term vision and community resilience. In terms of delivery, we are appointing to a new community engagement officer within the policy team, and further along the agenda is the Plan for Neighbourhoods proposal for 2 new posts, which will also be really key to delivering on this agenda and working with other officers across the council and partners and our community groups and our community to deliver on this. So we ask for approval of both these strategies tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to move the recommendations as set out and approve the strategy. I mean, this is quite a detailed document. It's a very important document from community cohesion point of view and, like I say, community engagement point of view. I think in my view, I mean, it covers a lot of the strategic, gives a strategic overview and strategic look. I think there's probably something needs to be in there about, say, misinformation or disinformation, because I think one of the precursors of the events last year was a lot of it was misinformation, and everything just spiraled out of kind of control, and then things just got worse and up and down the country, and had a kind of detrimental effect on communities. So I think that there needs to be something within the framework, in the strategy, that kind of highlights or looks at that issue. And also I think that there needs to be a greater, in my view, working with all the voluntary organisations and businesses and communities across the whole of Pendle. I think it's crucial. Because I think that there might be at the moment just certain focus on certain areas or for certain sectors. But I think businesses play a very big role. Like I said, the overall strategy kind of reflects that, but I think there just needs to be that finer detail where we specifically start to focus on businesses, communities, like Rotary organisations in Park Norswick and Cone, AB, and bringing in all these organisations together.
To clarify, was that for the community engagement?
Community engagement. And cohesion as well.
Okay.
Yeah. If well.
Can I just ask a question? I mean, you ignorance, but where's the funding coming from for the community engagement officer?
I mean, to be honest,
that post is replacing what was the programme officer post within the policy team. So that person left last year, and we've reconfigured the team so that there's the community engagement element to support the programme side of
And
it.
exactly what will that officer's role be, Sarah? Because obviously funding is virtually non-existent for community engagement, so unlike going back decades, what will that person's job be?
So there's been quite a lot of activity over the last year where we've looked and engaged with residents, and we've been reliant really on external parties for that engagement, which obviously comes at a cost as well. So we want to ensure that the engagement to support all services within the council, that there's a point of contact there to support that engagement, be it with our programmes like our holiday activities and food programme, for example, or be it within specific work that's going on in different services. So give us that link back to the community really, because we think that's been a missing link in the work we've been doing.
Thank you.
Second. Yeah, I've got Martin first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo your comments. This is a really good paper and really interesting. And nowhere is community cohesion needed more than Pendle. So, I mean, it's a very, very appropriate and useful piece of work. You mentioned the community engagement officer, new role. That's clearly welcome. With that role being filled, will you have, do you think, the resource to be able to make the progress on these kind of objectives that you're seeking?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. The resource is there to, I think, support and facilitate community engagement across the council and outside of the council as well. So we see that as being a really integral part of the policy team and the corporate team, really, to work across the patch rather than it being, the role just of that individual, but it's about how we support and work with others to achieve that.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all ask where this new policy officer post has been agreed?
I think I can try to get that information and come back to you.
Well,
Sarah,
I'm asked the question because the culture of Pendle Council has been, when there's a restructuring, when there's a change of role, the members of all groups are kept in the loop. We know what's happening, and we're not taken by surprise in an executive meeting where it is announced that there is a new post. Surely the council has some role in this, and apparently that is sadly lacking. Now, sat alongside me, there's Councillor Dorothy Lord, who, until relatively recently, held the post of the bank for community safety issues. I chair the community safety partnership, and I think it's news to both of us. So, where is this where is this discussion? Where is the dialogue with councillors? I wasn't going to talk about this, but I was rather taken aback.
Yeah, sure, Chair. So like I say, it's a reconfiguration of the programme officer post within the policy team. So that's been done through the usual HR processes to amend the job description for that post.
Right, okay. That's right. Philip.
Yeah, and then through yourself, just to kind of augment what Sarah said there. This post, as per all other posts, has been collectively agreed by CLT. I'm a member of CLT, so there has been a collective decision to agree the post. I think the rationale in terms of perhaps not bringing it to members, and I take the point, perhaps that should have been done, was the fact that effectively it's a cost neutral. There is money within the budget, this is replacing a different post. So there is an argument that perhaps we shouldn't have done that, but that was possibly the rationale and reason for proceeding the way that it was done, Chair.
That's fair, that's right. Thank you for the explanation, that makes it clearer, yeah.
Chair, I'll come to the points that I wanted to make earlier on, but just assuming this. If there is no need for a programme officer in the policy section, it may be a better use of that resource to actually use it for the provision of universal services, rather than have another policy officer who isn't actually going to be providing services, but giving, and I quote, support and facilitating. And my frustration is that in order to achieve cohesion, we as a council need to provide good quality services, universal services, across the piece. I mean, this was demonstrated in Northern Ireland, where the cohesion was sadly a lot greater lacking than it is in Pendle. And one way that the problems in Northern Ireland was addressed was ensuring that there was enough resource to actually have the decent services and the proper services for all communities. And I think my initial view is that this is a mistake, and that it's not something that the council should be doing, and I'm very much disappointed that there hasn't been that dialogue with members that there should have been. I've said the piece on that. The point I was wanting to make, Chair, and I think the big problem with this is, and I'm going to go back a quarter of a century, because in the early noughties, I was sat in this room with the then divisional commander, I think it was Ian McPherson at the time, with loads of other people, and we were confronting the riots. We had riots in Burnley, we had riots in Bradford, and we were working 24 hours a day to try and stop the big riots in Pendle. And the reason, the underlying reason for the riots a quarter of a century ago was the perceived targeting of resources on particular sections of the community. And the unrest stemmed from that. Other things as well, but I mean, essentially that was the root cause. What do we have now? We have successive governments favouring one part of Pendle, creating two-tier towns in our borough. Instead,
focus on the strategy that's
yes,
in front of us.
This is community cohesion, Ashdad. This is community cohesion.
Absolutely.
It is not cohesive. It is not cohesive to concentrate scores of millions of pounds of resources on one part of the borough, when what Pendle is crying out for is a fair funding for the whole of the borough. And I go back to my point about universal services. If we are being serious about having community cohesion, we would be saying to the government, look, it's all very nice giving, 25 million here, another 20 million there for Nelson and the rest, but leaving all the rest of Pendle out. If we want to concentrate on deprivation, let's have a look at the super output areas that have the greatest deprivation, and they aren't all in Nelson. They're in Briarfield, they're in Colne, and in some cases, some of them are in other parts of Pendle as well. So let's address deprivation. Let's address the root cause of the criticism, the breeding ground for the dissatisfaction and the non-cohesion that we have. But no, we've just got successive governments playing to get most votes and ploughing money into one particular part of Nelson. And I know you guys aren't going to like that, because I'm being critical, but in terms of cohesion, and somebody who is passionate about cohesion, who's, through the Community Safety Partnership, has striven to bring people together and have that universal service provision that, people work alongside each other, they play alongside each other. We're not getting that, and we're going to get big problems. Well, you shouldn't just be noting it. You should be, actually listening and acting. Yeah. And I think the route that you're following, a policy officer here, sort of ploughing more funding in there. I'm sorry, but it is not cohesive.
Yeah. The thing is that the town deal funding, that's a national programme. We have no say or control of that, where the government gives that funding to which towns and cities and that kind of thing. We were very lucky, and I think we should be very grateful that we got that funding here in Pendle. Colne had Levelling Up, Nelson has part of that Levelling Up town deal funding, so we should be grateful for that, and it has revitalised Colne. And hopefully that same situation will be replicated here in Nelson. And then we have the UKSPF, which is similar kind of programme. Van Oswick has benefited, AB has benefited, and Briarfield has benefited. So, we should be grateful for that. Coming back to the original main strategy, obviously Philip has explained the background, and going back to the main strategy, I'm in favour of that. I'm moving the original report. I think it will do some very good work over the next couple of years until this, Pendle Council, exists. And again, grateful to the officers for all their hard work. There's a lot of hard work and effort has gone into developing this strategy, and then we've got to now deliver on that. I'll bring in Lawrence and then Iqbal.
Thank you, Leader. It's just a point on Councillor Whip's original point on the appointment of staff. This report is a crossover from your permanent Chief Exec, who's, I think last day might be this week, and my good self. I will endeavour to look at the policy of our HR, because it's my responsibility as the head of paid service to do that, and I will come back to the executive and the members in this room with a response to that as soon as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Iqbal.
Yeah, I think the point about the member of staff has been explained more by Philip and Morris and Sarah, but just in terms of the points that Councillor Whip raised about funding, I think it would be disingenuous of us as elected members to say that only one part of the borough has benefited from funding. The whole of Pendle has benefited, and we talk about fair funding. Where there are pockets of deprivation, whether they be in Colne, Nelson, Briarfield, Eby, Van Oswick, Barrowford, or whatever, they need to be brought up to the level that other parts of Pendle are. That's the only way that we'll get fairness. And if the government, whichever government it is, wants to give money to particular parts of Pendle, I agree that in terms of cohesion, that out there seems that it's wrong. But the whole purpose of this community engagement officer will be to go out there, and if, for example, they see pockets of deprivation in Cornwall, which I think are far worse in parts than parts of Nelson and Bradfield, then that's the role of this council, to go out and say to government, look, we want you to address that inequality in parts of Cornwall. Not the whole of Cornwall is affluent, parts of Waterside that Dot's represented for a long time. There are severe pockets of poverty there amongst young people and children and families. And I think as a council we stand up to that and say to government, this is what we want, as we have done in past decades. But to say that one part of the borough is getting all the funding, I think is disingenuous, Chairman.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Councillor Iqbal. And I think with all the local government reorganisation that's happening, one of the key fundamental parts of that is, well, one part of that is that you deal with the deprivation. And if you want to really deal with that and plan ahead, you know, I know in this room, some of the elected members are probably not going to be in favour of, say, joining other authorities where you could actually be part of that deprivation, realistically speaking. But yes, it's got to be, you know, think more strategically here. Hanif.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if we go back again a quarter of a century, before SRB came up, yeah, there used to be Section 11, there used to be other funding for dedicated communities. And when the Tory government in 1992 came up, they closed all the 40 different groups and created a single regeneration budget, okay, of £1.4 billion. Okay, even there was a saving of £0.6 million. And these sort of strategies were there as a key thing. Over the last 10 years, a lot of this work has actually been diluted everywhere. We have equal opportunity offices in all the local boroughs, all the organisations, businesses as well. If you look at the last decade, a lot of that work has gone underground, and the way the government's done it is, put this for each department. What happens then is the managers are focused on offices producing results, and a lot of the other work is done, obviously gone. So we need to really look at these things and bring them back up because they're so important. And what we don't realise is that we can spend millions of pounds, but if we don't work with people on the ground, we're not going to succeed. It's like any business. If you don't start small, you're not going to become billionaires. You just can't have a company set up as a billionaire company. Okay? This work is so important. And it's not in Nelson, it's not in Bradfield, it's everywhere. It's not a black and white issue here. This is not a man or woman issue. You know, every part, even if you're affluent or you're poor, you've got cohesion problems. You know, you go into the poshest areas, they've got problems. You know, but those problems are very different to the ones in Bradfield, for example. So I represent Bradfield and Reedley. Two distinct wards. One is very affluent, really. Bradfield, where I live, is one of the poorest in Lancashire. But when I walk up King's Causeway, I see so many issues. I talk to the residents, I see so many issues. And there's still issues which we as councils need to look at. But unfortunately, because this sort of work has gone under the carpet for many, many years, I'm not blaming Pendle. This is not just a Pendle-wide issue, it's a national issue. I'm glad we're looking at these things. What we can then do, as members and others, get involved and shape how the work is developed. And that is something I would say to you, sir, we need to get involved in. Because most of us have got a lot of experience in this work. But I support the document. I think it's a good thing. It would have been nice to obviously get the members involved, but obviously it's too late now. We don't want to stop at the clock, we need to move on. But obviously we can learn and we can, so I'll second this and I think we need to move on with this.
Chair,
Yes.
two further points. First point is that the funding going into our principal urban areas has sucked in £1.3 million of funds that were Pendle. So the extra money that is coming in as part of levelling up, town deal, is actually costing the rest of the borough a huge amount of money. And I articulated the lines that are actually taking that 1.3 million, but it's all the resource going into Pendle Rise and the rest. The second point, Chair, is that surely this is a decision for council. It's a strategy. It's not the purview of the executive to agree this. Constitutionally, this needs to be agreed by the full council.
Well, I think that's something we can pick up and seek advice from Howard. But are we generally all in favour?
We need that advice now then.
Yeah. It's, yeah, I suppose it is a, well, it's whether it's policy or not, isn't it? So if it's a policy document, the word strategy is used, isn't it? So I suppose the safest thing would be for the executive to recommend to council, make its recommendation to council.
Yeah, that's fine. We need a meeting next Thursday, so yeah. All those in favour?
Not on the agenda. Not on the agenda.
Well, we can-
Yeah,
well,
it'll be one.
yeah. In the future. Got land and property asset management strategy.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Peter Gregory. I've been working as an interim employee for the authority, charged with reviewing and refreshing the Council's land and property asset management strategy. What you have in front of you this evening is the fruits of those particular labours. This has been to you before on the 30th of October. I recall no particular issues or complaints about the document as it was presented, but you did choose to refer it to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for their consideration and for their thoughts. Overview and Scrutiny considered it on the 16th of January this year. They particularly requested the inclusion of case studies into the document which would illustrate the kind of interventions that the asset strategy promotes, and I have done a little bit of work and put some case studies into the document in response to that particular suggestion. I now wish to request your approval and the adoption of the revised strategy, which will replace the previous document approved by Council in 2018. Just finish up with an apology for an omission. I should have included within the report a recommendation that the delegated authority of the Director of Resources should be allowed in order to make any non-material changes to the strategy during its lifetime. I trust that the document meets your approval. If you've got any questions, I'm more happy to address them.
So just in addition to that additional recommendation, it says Director of Resources, can I suggest in consultation with group leaders?
I think it says executive function, so that's why I think at this stage, probably the leader.
Suggestion.
I think this is a good document, you know, again, there's quite clear information within that. But I think they probably need to reconvene the what do you call it, the asset subgroup that used to kind of meet on a regular basis. And obviously we've approved this policy, but you know, we've got a local government reorganisation happening, and we've had a budget meeting with, as an independent group, we kind of, and also with support of other groups, we've put in some money for asset transfer to working with all the town and parish councils, and this is a great opportunity to bring them on board and work with them and see where we can share services or transfer some of the assets so it's kept local when the new unitary does come in being. Councillor Hanif.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, further what you just said, I think it's important because this is a good document, but I think asset transfers, we've done a lot of transfers to town parish councils. I know officers have produced a full list of all the assets in each of the towns in Pendle, And I think it's about time we now start talking to the town parish councils. We've allocated £500,000 in the budget, and that was the reason for this. If we keep talking about the 3 years, it's going to take 3 years to transfer some of these things and discussions. So, but we need to start talking to them now. I don't know if we should be sharing, and this is a suggestion to the officers, I'm not sure here, but for each of the towns, whatever assets we have, can we share them with the relevant town and parish council, saying which one you'd be interested in to take on and things like this? We've got to start the ball moving somewhere. The last time we had a meeting was about 18 months ago, so I think we need to have that urgent meeting and start the ball moving. Because my concern is that if 2028 does come along and Unitary does come along, in 12 months' time or 18 months' time, the government might put a stop to us from doing any major of these things. So it's not a 3-year thing; it's a 12-month thing. So we need to be doing things within these 12 months. And if local town parish councils are wanting some of the item, buildings, land, whatever they are, car parks, whatever they are, then we need to obviously seriously consider those, including some of the big, like home unit, like other things we have. So I think that's also should be part of this, not necessarily part of this strategy, but should go hand in hand with this. So I would suggest to Phil, does it come under yourself, Phil?
It will come to me.
Okay, it comes under you, and I think that's important to start. I've already had a chat with Philip and Kieran a few weeks ago, but I think we need to start the momentum, because if we start saying June and July, we've lost 3-4 months, and talking to other councils and other unitaries who've set up in the country, they guided me that at least 18 to 24 months in advance sometimes, the government puts a stop on major issues and say you can't even make smaller decisions. How relevant is that? How true is that? I've got no idea. But if that is the case, we then need to move all the timetable this way and get the things going. Because one of the greatest hassles we have in Pendle, compared to other Lancashire towns, all the town has town parish councils, and they've all benefited by working in partnership. You know, it is a partnership, and we need to start the process, Chair.
Councillor David Corbett.
Yes, I was on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and obviously you sent it to us to have a look at. If there's any questions to look at or things to consider, I think you just sort of hand it over and say, go on, you look first then. But anyway, we had an excellent session with Peter. We went through lots and lots of different aspects of the document. I think that the two main things that came out for me, I mean, we mentioned about having examples of where we've done things right and where things have changed, and therefore bringing it to life with case studies. Because I think the thing that always amazes me is, you know, we have about £50 million worth of fixed assets, I think, in the books, roughly. And it's like, we own so many things. I don't know if we're unique in this, or whether councils across the country will all have enormous amounts of assets left, right and centre, which basically means that a lot of them, as Honey pointed out, just get ignored and left behind. You know, we have car parks being abandoned and, you know, left to ruin pothole and everything. So there's all these things which really, as part of an asset management strategy, should be prioritised. A lot of them just cost money. And we know where we are in terms of cash, and therefore whenever we say to people like Phil Riley, you know, can you tidy up this green space, or whatever, he said, well, I haven't got the budget for that, you know, it's committed to this, that and the other, then there's nothing left. And we as members are left sort of going, well, what can we do? Same is true on buildings. I mean, Neil and Julian will be, we've got a very long list of things to look at in the Cone area where we highlight problem sites. We've got cemetery chapels with mouldy ceilings. We've got Exchange Street buildings that are falling apart. All of these things are sort of dropping to pieces on our watch. And this is not good in terms of asset management. And I think the point is made about transfer. You know, as you say, let's get on with this. There's an awful lot of appetite, both at Cone and also what we see in Shoreham and Laneshire Bridge. When you go there and they say, we are happy to take that on. It's an eyesore on our doorstep in the middle of our village or our town, whatever. We'd love to take it on. We've got the appetite, we've got the energy, we've got some money as well. So I think getting through that prioritisation process, things that need repair, that we should repair, things that we should be passing on to town and parish councils, before, as you suggest, there might be a drop-dead date, and you know, thou shalt not do anything more fundamental. I think one of the things Combe Town Council learned from taking on a lot of the allotments was that the legal process can take a long time, and I don't think we covered ourselves in glory as Pendle Council in terms of transferring those things. There were lots of I's to dot, T's to cross, etc. And it was a case of just getting that done, because it does take forever. So you know, let's churn it through. Once you've done one set of allotments, you just cross out the name at the top, and you've got another agreement for the next council. So I think if we can do that prioritisation exercise, do some repairs where necessary, get things ready for transfer, get the appetite going with the town and parishes, so that within 2 to 3 years' time, we know where we are when it comes to the potential local government reorganisation, and a lot of the assets that mean a lot to our towns and parishes are owned and maintained and loved and cherished and used by them. So that's the key.
Thank you. Hanif?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Just 1 or 2 points. When Phil Mosley was here, I remember looking at the asset register then. And I'm talking about Phil and Wheeler here. I went, and so it wasn't just talking to town parish councils, David. We actually went to see the residents.
Yeah.
Okay, and I said to quite a few residents, this patch of land, would you want to take it over? And they say yes, fantastic. And I identified about 6 areas, 6 small parts of land which the residents take on, things like this. And the condition was you can't build on it, you can't do this, it's got to be flowers, it's got to be for this. And so it's not just the town-based councils, there may be others, maybe local businesses, wherever the patches are, whoever the neighbours are might take it on. When Philip left, unfortunately the conversation dropped, and we just went bust basically. So there is a lot of interest. There was, and I'm sure if we ask members now, this is up to us in our patches. If we're that dedicated, we can then talk to our residents saying, these are small parts of lands, and say, do you want to take it over? So some town parish councils might not want to take, but some residents might want to take, small business might want to take, things like this. So it's just not talking to the town parish councils. If members know their patch and they know things, I think the field should be open.
Yeah, I think you just need some kind of mechanism. Obviously, our traditional partners, working partners are your town and parish councils, and you need some kind of mechanism that wherever we asset transfer is sustainable, and is value for money, and is obviously is public in public kind of ownership in that sense. And because you don't want to go down 5 years or 10 years down the line and then it becomes unsustainable, and then it goes back to say the new authority or Pendle Council that was having to pick up the tab. But yeah, but we can explore the different options. But I think the key partners will be at this stage the town and parish councils that we have a conversation with. And I think the starting point will be with the asset like a working group. I think that's the starting point. All those in favour?
Hang on a second.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about something else then. I'm quite shocked that Colne Leisure Centre isn't featured in investment plans for sports centres. So, can anybody tell me why it isn't a priority?
Oh, yes, this is a leisure trust kind of. Is it, you mean specifically in this document? That's it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can directly answer that, Chair.
Page 39.
I think what I'd say, Chair, is obviously, money is going into Colne Leisure Centre as it is into the other 2 leisure centres. Why it doesn't explicitly feature in this document, I can't answer that question. I don't want to put other colleagues on the spot, so we'll come back to you on that. That's okay, Councillor.
So which document are we looking at now?
Separate appendix.
It's online. It's online.
Okay.
David.
Well, it's in my hand. land and property asset management strategy. Just to back up what Councillor Lord is saying, it's on page 39, and what it says in terms of West Craven's swimming pool, sports centre, Pendle Leisure Centre, wavelengths, Marsden Park Golf Course and Marsden Park Golf Clubhouse. The actions are, single bullet point, complete the proposed extension to wavelengths. Now, I completely agree with Councillor Lord. That's a wholly inadequate way of setting a strategy. As you know, Chair, over the past 2 years and through the shared administration, we have prioritised investing in the backlog of repairs following the previous administration's slashing the £62,000 that was in the budget. In terms of Colne, the significant investment has been to re-roof the sports hall in Colne, and as I recollect it, from when it was cancelled under the Conservatives, the price rocketed from £100 and a bit £1,000 to over £200,000 to repair that roof. Now, there has been successive rounds of external funding for sports centres. West Craven and Wavelengths both received revenue support from the Swimming Pool Support Fund. Wavelengths received revenue support, capital support for energy improvement measures in the tune of £300,000. And the public sector decarbonisation programme, which we were pressing for Colne to be included in that, and it was rejected. The outcome of that is that there's a significant amount of money for Wavelengths and there's some money for West Craven and nothing for Colne. Now, note. In the budget that we agreed, the council did agree to our proposal to put funding into leisure facilities. I mean, we would have preferred it to be more, but nevertheless there is £750,000 there, and hopefully Colne will get its fair whack of that. But if, and I assume again that this is a council strategy, it actually refers on the agenda to the purpose of this report is spread for approval the council's proposed land and property asset management strategy. So it's not the gift of the executive to agree this or not. When this comes to the council, we'll certainly be proposing that we strengthen the investment in Colne Leisure Centre and ensuring that there's equity across the piece. So I support Councillor Lord in that. Can I refer to allotments? If we look at the allotments as set out on, say I find it the right page, I've flagged up the wrong one, we find that there's a whole list of allotments in Colne and Nelson which are still in the ownership of Pendle Borough Council. Now, I go back to 1987 when we created Bonalswick Town Council. At the very first meeting, and Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price is appreciating this anecdote because I know she's fond of anecdotes. The very first meeting of Bonalswick Town Council was presented with a set of conveyances for us to sign or apply the common seal. I think we had to sign because we didn't have a common seal at the time. Because the town council had become the allotments authority. So it's not a case of legal negotiation or anything like that. if you've got an allotments authority, then any allotments automatically transfer to that allotment authority. It's a successor authority for allotments. So I just cannot understand why we've got a long list of allotments in Colne and Nelson that are still on the Borough Council's books. They should have gone to the respective town councils previously. There is one which has been forgotten about in Bonoldswick, and that's the Richmond Avenue allotment. And I mean, we rescued that one because the allotment holder on it wasn't paid any rent for a good number of years. They could have claimed adversarial possession, but we managed to salvage that. And that was a mistake. So, you know, that needs resolving. But can I come to the nub of this? Because very sensibly, Hanif is saying, well, you know, we need to get on with transfers. And you know that I wholly subscribe to that. The issue is that the property services people, Phil Kirby's people, the legal people with Howard, are wholly consumed on getting Pendle Rise through. So, you know, the whole of the energy, the whole of the time, the whole of the expertise is devoted to that project in Nelson. It's another example of where that programme is sucking in resources. So, faced with requests for a little plot of land to be transferred here, there and everywhere, what do our officers do? Well, they have to concentrate on the main event, don't they? And because there's no big money involved, and you know, for the most part, we transfer things at a nominal pound. You know, that it never ever becomes the priority. So how you square that circle? You know, do you ship in a load more solicitors? Do you ship in a load more surveyors to be able to cope with that? I don't know. I don't think that's realistically going to happen. Might be a better thing than, pardon me, Sarah, but might be better than having another person in the policy section. You know, actually doing something that actually makes a difference. I've got a whole host of tabs on here, and I could go through every single one of them, but I'm only going to pick up one or two. Halifax Road, bought for £800,000 from the county council. At the time, the then leader of the council said, oh, we're going to get 6,000 burial plots. The planning application now shows 4,500 burial plots. But there's a document on the planning portal which talks about there being 12,000 burial plots, and that's come down to 10,000 burial plots. So this council, under the former administration and supported by yourself, Chair, was willing to shell out £801,000 to the county council for land sight unseen. No checks, no site investigations, no boreholes, nothing. Now, whether that's value for money or not, when you look at the valuations in here, it's certainly not reflected at that sort of value. I've mentioned Colne allotments. Nelson Town Hall and number 1 Market Street. I am full on with using number 1 Market Street to its utmost, and Nelson Town Hall I think would make a very good community hub, and I very much hope that Nelson Town Council would take on the Town Hall in part, if not in full. But that comes to another issue, because the transfer that we've had up to press to town and parish councils has been very lumpy indeed. And so if you go through this document, you'll find that the parks are still with Pendle Borough Council in Nelson. and Briarfield, whereas, as Councillor Coleman-Price pointed out earlier on, there's an appetite elsewhere to actually take ownership, take responsibility and get on with that. So if we're going to go forward, there needs to be equity, and the town councils that are dragging their heels, and Briarfield is one of them, then we need to get them to come along. And I appreciate that Briarfield gets its hand in its pocket and pays the revenue consequences of the work.
Of the cost.
But the key thing is, if we're gonna carry on with those asset transfers, the people who are already paying out and paying handsomely for the privilege of having accepted liabilities, not assets really, but having taken on those liabilities and are charging the council tax to their local taxpayers, there needs to be equity across the piece, and we need to make sure that that equity is seen as well. Last point, I'm going to go to page 34, where the bullet point at the bottom there, identified car park locations for the siting of electrical vehicle charging points. And I would remind the executive that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Councillor Tom Whip came with a proposal which was agreed by the council to get £20,000 from Instavolt for the installation of fast chargers at the Wellhouse Road car park in Bonolswick. 3 years later, nothing has happened, and the last time we discussed this, people were waxing lyrical about, oh well, we need to do this, we need to do that, and we need to do the other. We need to get our finger out. We need to actually do things rather than talk about them endlessly. And Mr. Chairman, there are lots of other things I will pick up on this, but as it will be going to the council meeting, I'm more than happy to pursue those elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Vick. Just one or two quick points from myself before I bring Sarah in. In relation to Colne Sports Centre or Pendle Village Centre, I think over the last 2 years we've spent over £363,000, including when we were shared administration. And I think we are working with Pendle Village Trust. We have a new chief executive, and there's a lot of focus on delivering services at Colne Sports Pendle Village Centre, Waverlands and West Craven to kind of upgrade most of those facilities as much as we can. We've been very successful with the bid, which I know you were not originally in favour, if I can say that. And we put the expert advice that we got. We were more likely to be successful if we proceeded with the bid that we did put in. We had to do much funding, which we from some of that money.
Use the £1 million that I put in the budget.
From last year, and then some of that money is from this year, which as a council we approved. Just a quick point about the cemetery, and there has been challenges, in the sense, we've had to do a lot of the works on it from environmental agency point of view. So we're doing it so we make sure that everything is done proper, so to get to a planning stage. And again, looking at the information and the expert advice that I've been given and the information I've been given, I think there will be net income, if not a lot, double net income for that site, because there'll be a niche walls and space for memorial trees, and like I say, the fine detail of that is there'll be a lot more income, as sad as it is, and we've got to bury people. I know you personally disagree with that element of the thing, of burying, but we've got community here. People have different background, faith, needs, requirements, whatever you want to call it. And it's a facility there for the whole of Pendle, all the people on Pendle. So we've just got to respect people's wishes. I've got Sarah.
Okay, thank you. As you know, I'm very green, but as a former archaeologist, I want to be buried. You don't want to be buried, but we should have that choice. So with regard to the public sector decarbonisation grants, I questioned Victor sternly on this because I was very disappointed that Cone wasn't included. And he explained to me in a way that I fully understood that took me back to the Levelling Up grant for Cone. So the Levelling Up grant for Cone, I was desperate to get the Savoy Theatre and the Savoy Cinema included in that grant because I really felt it's a little strange and cultural jewel in Cone. But I couldn't because it didn't fulfil the very strict criteria of these grants. And you want to win. You want to win. So obviously we're not going to go in to apply for these grants with a non-compliant application that would almost be certain that we wouldn't win. And if we'd applied for all three, then it would have taken us over the limit. And also you have to look at the boilers that are closest to end of life, which certainly was the case in West Craven, because they were apparently condemned in 2013, which was something that the Conservative administration discovered. So the public sector decarbonisation grant, it might not deliver everything that we could have wished for, but let's not be churlish and cut up our nose to spite our faces. It's delivered something. And it's a wonderful thing that Victor has been able to do. £1.7 million, the amount of pollution, the amount of carbon that our swimming pools burn through makes us a major polluter in Pendle. And that will be saved, plus there'll be an annual saving of £6,000 on heating. So it is to be celebrated. And there are, as you pointed out, other expenditure in Cone, things that have been done and can be done. With regard to the allotments, I'm slightly confused because I'm sure Dorothy will remember this, and David did, which is that Councillor Clegg was celebrating that finally, after something like a dozen years or more, that all the allotments that Cone Town Council wanted were transferred. And I remember that we didn't want River Street, and there were a couple of others that we didn't want. I'm not on the allotments committee, so forgive my lack of detail here, but I felt that was boxed off. It had been an enormous saga, but it was boxed off. We're not, I don't think, at Cone, expecting any more allotments. The transfer is painfully slow. Certainly I go to Trawden Parish Council, and it's a saga. It's a terrible saga. It goes on every single month. I write a lot to Philip. He's probably sick of me writing to him. He writes to Karen. She's probably sick of hearing from me. So it shouldn't have to be so hard, and I totally get, and I hadn't realised that there might be a date that's before 2028, which is an even stronger reason to get on with it. And certainly Cone Town Council, they've sat down and asked about things like the Mooney, for example, and been told no. And they've sat down and asked about their cemetery and been told no. And apparently it makes a tiny profit. But then at the same time, I'm hearing there isn't the money to invest in the structures in the cemetery. You can't have it both ways. Either it makes a profit and you're putting it into the structures, or it doesn't make a profit. And now I'm not sure which it is. With regard to the charging points, I was quite excited just before we came out because I could hear my computer pinging and I thought it might be bad things. I said, before we leave the house, let me just see what it is that it's pinging about. And yesterday, I went to a brilliant webinar from the Carbon Saving Trust, all about electric car charging technology. And I have to say, I learnt an immense amount about the different technologies, about the different vehicles, about the things in future, about the horses for courses nature of car charging. And there's a lady in the northwest called Fiona, and I'm in touch with Fiona, and Fiona will be getting in touch with IFTI. I tried ringing IFTI today, but I think he's off. Because the focus for the levy, as I understand it in Pendle, has been all to do with these grooves in pavements for car charging in terrace streets. And that makes a lot of sense if you look at our 62%, I think it's a little bit more actually in Cone, of terrace streets. That makes sense that we have the groove in pavement technology. But I'm still very, very keen to get it in car parks. And I explained this. They had a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and they said that that was quite rare that people were interested in car parks because they were interested in providing for residents. But I said, you know, we want people to come to Cone and enjoy our 3 theatres and our market and so on. And so we want to be able to offer fast car charging in car parks. And I was told definitively that Fiona can help us get that funding from Levy, which is held by LCC, and she will help us ensure that we can get the electric charging in the car parks and the under groove pavement charging as well.
We have somebody
I've got
£20,000.
I've got quite a few speakers, so if we can kind of be as brief as possible, because we've got a lot on the agenda. So I've got Peter next.
Yeah, Councillor Chair, thank you very much. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Whip and Councillor Lord's concerns about Colne Leisure Centre, if I may, very, very briefly. And the reason the wavelengths has been mentioned specifically by name in the actions is because there is a project ongoing with regard to wavelengths, which clearly has to be completed. There is no such projects with regard to the others as far as I am aware. But this strategy in the other side of the table here does commit Pendle Leisure Trust and the Council to continually investigate what investment they can make in all of the leisure centres that are mentioned in this particular part of them, and how they can improve it and what they should be looking for. So I don't fully understand why they think that it's been ignored, but if it hasn't been accurately reflected on, that's fine.
That's right. Thank you for that. Iqbal.
Just a quick point in terms of the allotments. I mean, I've looked through the list in terms of Nelson, Briarfield and Colne for that matter. There's 26 allotments short. Well, I'm pretty sure that all of those have been transferred to the respective town and parish councils, so I'm not sure why they're showing on our asset register.
Through you, Chair.
Sorry, I was going to suggest, obviously this is going to full council next week, whether you as chairman will just review the allotments, but I'm pretty sure, for example, the Nelson ones, there's a lot. I'm sure that they've all gone to Nelson Town Council years ago.
As far as I'm aware, everything on this list is currently within the council's asset register. Therefore, we still own them. There may be proposals, certainly with regard to the Colne allotments. There is a specific action in the strategy that they should be transferred. That was agreed a long, long time ago, but for some reason it has not been completed. So it may well have happened with the others that you mentioned as well.
I'll just suggest a quick conversation with Colne Town Council, Nelson Town Council, Briarfield and any others that are on the list would resolve that. But I'm sure because Nelson Town Council deal with the allotments in Nelson.
Yeah, I don't know why there's a blockage.
I can just review that.
That's right. Hanif?
Yeah, Chair, thanks. Couple of issues. One, just to help Mr. Whip. Briarfield pays 100% whatever charge. The reason we don't take it on, because I'm the clerk, I'm the part-time clerk there, and we don't have any officers. So what we agreed with Phil Mosdale, that we will pay 100% anything that's done over there, any leaf that's picked up, we will pay. So they'll just send me a £15 bill last week, it's been paid already. Okay? I think you got the check yesterday. Yeah. But on the what we just talked about now? Allotments. In Briarfield there's 3, Chair. And just to help my learner friend over here, we've got 2. One, Pendle Council still owns. And we asked that about 8 years ago to say it's about 5 blocks. So pass it on, for whatever reason it doesn't. So we know in Briarfield there's one which still obviously is in Pendle Council's hands, which obviously should be transferred to Briarfield. I can't recall any Nelson. I think they've all gone, because I remember working quite vividly in this. Conor on a short way.
Thank you. I've got Martin.
Thank you, Leader. But I welcome this asset management strategy. I think there's a lot of good work reflected in here. As I listening to Councillor Whip, I lamented the absence of the time clock that we have in council, and I concluded that there's probably an inverse relationship between length of time to the next election and the length of speaking. Councillor Whip talked about Pendle Leisure Trust 750,000 and can we make sure that Colne has its fair share, etc. But I reflected that Councillor Iqbal made a very good point earlier in the evening, because in the real world we have to allocate funds on the basis of where they're most needed. And that's exactly how Pendle Leisure Trust operate. And I sit on the board of Pendle Leisure Trust. The new chief executive is working very hard to make the best use of the resources, and I'm sure that all residents of Pendle will see the benefit of that. There's been a lot of discussion tonight as though people who live in Nelson never leave Nelson, and people who live in Barnoldswick never leave Barnoldswick, but I'm reminded, my colleague Sarah used the words "let's not be churlish," and indeed let's not be churlish, because there's been a lot of discussion and comments tonight that have been very churlish and parochial. Let's remember that we're all Pendle councillors and we all should be working in the best interests of the residents. So I welcome this paper. Thank you.
And with this new bid that we've been successful with, the Pendle Leisure Trust, you know, they're going to get some air source heat pumps, you know, hooray. Get some...
Have we made progress, Chair?
Yeah.
Going back to, this is for information for me really, and probably the only non-driver in this room. The electric vehicles, are they here to stay? I ask.
Why do you want to get
Do
one down?
Sorry?
Wants to buy one.
Do I want to buy one?
Self-driving.
No, it'll be an electric wheelchair I'll want eventually. I had a resident that asked me if she could put a charger thing across the pavement in front of her terrace house, like Sarah was talking about. So I asked Scott Worley about this, and he has a strategy all about this, and he sent me an email. He told me not to share it with anybody at that point, but he was taking it out to various groups to tell them what they could do with this charging thing on back streets, on front streets, you know, so that was very interesting. But my son was telling me last night, well, I won't tell you what he said, but he said electric cars are, you know, he had one, he hasn't now, because he found he couldn't travel up to Dundee, where he has a contract, and back without stopping off, and he likes to travel within the day, but I stop off for an hour to charge. And also now there's tax on them, isn't there? The tax. Oh, you have to have taxed in April, is it? You know. So it made me think, you know, are people going to go back to, is it hybrid cars? Or stick with it? I don't know. I just wonder what people thought. Nothing, obviously.
I suspect as Dad's going to move the discussion.
All those in favour?
But when I'm giving you a lift back home, Dot, in my electric vehicle, I'll tell you all about it.
Oh, I didn't know it was an electric vehicle.
All those in favour?
So, Chair, could I just be clear? I don't think it's on the agenda for next week. No,
Yeah,
so it's going to be the council meeting after that, the annual meeting.
I'm bringing forward item 10, resource, the plan for neighbourhoods. Sarah's going to take this one.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. So this is about resourcing what was previously called the long-term plan for towns. Government's new name for that programme is the Plan for Neighbourhoods, and this report is to seek approval for 2 new posts to enable the delivery of this programme. The first post is the Programme Manager post, and the second is the Community Development post. The Plan for Neighbourhoods Board met on the 14th of February and approved those 2 posts. The report is coming here to also approve those posts by the council.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to move the report. I sit on the long-term Plan for Neighbourhoods, and the recommendation unanimously was that we do move forward. I think we get initial funding just to set all this up, where we recruit new members of staff and get the we already have a detailed plan pretty much ready to go, but I think it requires some further consultation, and then hopefully in the next year we'll get the proper full funding to kind of get it up and running. So I'm happy to move approval. Second. All those in favour? Sorry.
Well, I've just got one sentence. Some neighbourhoods are more equal than others.
Yeah. Just one point, I agree with the staff, I think like this. One of the things I read somewhere, I can't see it, that they will come permanent staff upon the council. Now, my understanding is they'll be funded by the 10-year plan, and in all the projects I've ever worked in, wherever I am, if staff are funded by projects, then their jobs are until the project is there. Okay? Now, to me, that should be the case here. Otherwise, what's happening? We just, as the council, accumulating staff. Now, I don't think as an organisation every staff that we take on should be measured. We should have the funding thing like this. But these are project-based staff, Lawrence. Now, my understanding, and if I'm wrong, I hold my hand up. You want to say something?
Sorry,
So if you finish it, then.
Yeah.
Okay. So my understanding, so I'm just questioning, should, obviously it's going to work, but obviously it's a 10-year funding. This possible for 10 years. After the funding finishes, this post should go. We shouldn't be, Pender Council or whoever there is, shouldn't be absorbing those staff as there because they are project funded. They're dedicated project funded.
Just before we bring Sarah in, Gemma, please.
Yeah, so this is not a financial decision on our part. This has to do with employment law and how long they've been an employee. It's not to do with the length of the funding. If they were here for 2 years, we could tailor the length of their employment to the funding package. The length of the funding is too long to do that in employment law. They would become permanent employees.
Of course it is. Sarah.
Fortunate that we won't be existing in 10
Yeah.
years. I don't know. Just to say that I read the job description for Programme Manager Plan for Neighbourhoods, and I was really excited and I thought it was fabulous. And if I thought you'd recruit me, I'd give up being a councillor and apply. I know you wouldn't take me on. But I think
it doesn't stop you from applying.
Sorry?
It doesn't stop you from applying.
I think it's a positive post.
Okay.
You're both David.
All those in favour?
Yeah.
No,
Thank you. That's carried.
can't be employed by an authority within
11.
6 months of leaving.
Item 11, next one is Household Support Fund 7. Sarah?
Alright then, thank you, Chair. This report is regarding Household Support Fund, and it's to request delegated authority to the Director of Resources in conjunction with the Leader of the Council to approve the 25-26 HSF programme and any future reprofiling of the grant. So although the Government has confirmed a further round of HSF, we still don't know our allocation. We have had some information today from Lancashire County Council that their allocation will be significantly less this year, which will likely impact on the allocation to districts. So we don't have the final amount from Lancashire County Council at this stage. And the report outlines how we have distributed the grant previously through direct payment awards, and going forwards, we'd like to look at a delivery model which maximises the community voluntary and faith sector and gives that delegated authority subject to confirmation of that funding for the council. So by doing this, it means that we can mobilise quickly upon any funding confirmation and act quickly to ensure that the launch of HSF7, hopefully in April or May this year, can happen relatively quickly and effectively.
Thank you. Iqbal, do you want to?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, you want
Move it to
to move it? Second that, yeah. All those in favour? We've got the local development scheme,
one number.
number 7. Back to
Thank you,
Neil.
Leader. Just a couple of points on this. It's kind of an unusual situation we're in with this, in that we're being compelled by the NPPF and a ministerial statement to put an LDS in place. But the unusual situation is we will be starting the new local plan when we're sitting as part of the examination into the current local plans. So even though we will say we will be starting that, we won't have the staff to do it, but so we have to have an LDS in place for that at that stage. The other part of this is the government wants to streamline the process for putting local plans together. We don't have that legislation in place yet. They want to make the time frame a lot shorter. So we put the LDS together based on our knowledge of previous ways of putting local plans together. I think we will end up having to revamp the LDS when we get the new legislation in place. So in my view, it's probably premature for us to have to do an LDS, but we're complying with what the government are requiring us to do.
That's right. I'm happy to move the report set out. Do a seconder? Thank you. Yeah.
Chairman, I'm disappointed. I know you use the phrase "happy to move," but nobody should be happy about this. What the government are forcing Pendle Council to do is start a new local plan before we've actually concluded the local plan that we're on with at the minute, which, refresh my memory, have we been doing it for 10 years? I'll look across to Neil, was it 2015 when we started?
26 years.
Yeah, so, you know, a local plan, a decade in the making, major rehash a couple of years ago, which is coming to fruition. But the killer is that the government is saying that the 148 dwellings per annum figure, which is based on our demography, isn't adequate, and they want to more than double that. Now, over the lifetime of the plan, that means an extra 2,775 additional house requirement. So we've got to find land now for an additional 3,000 houses. Well, just let that sink in, because we're not going to manage that on former mill sites and brownfield land. This is going to strike at the very heart of the nature of our borough, the use of our green fields, and all to provide homes that our evidence shows aren't needed for local people. It makes a nonsense of the government policies and programmes and planning processes that this has got to happen. And then on top of that, when a new unitary comes along, there'll have to be a new local plan for the new unitary. Now, I don't know whether we'll still be on the local plan as agreed that we're currently on with, that is going to examination in public, or whether we'll have a draft local plan based on the new numbers by that stage, but I mean it's going to last a few short number of years before the new unitary does yet another local plan, and will by that stage we'll probably been on with it for 15 years, 16 years, 17 years, and all the time developers are running rampant, grabbing greenfield areas and putting forward proposals which are directly contrary to what this council, all of us, have agreed as being the way forward, which is modest housing development, primarily on brownfield sites, and we're going to be forced into a position where that's just chucked out of the window. So if I were in your chair, I would not be happy about this. I would be screaming from the rooftops and demanding that the government tears up the housing plans and join with all the other councils in the country that are protesting about this and potentially going to judicial review and saying, not on your Nelly.
The way the legislation has been done, I echo everything you're saying, David, but we've just been forced on by the government. It's something that we've got to kind of deliver. The housing numbers that we've been asked is pretty much doubling, but actually the government's forcing us to do that. It's not in our control. Sarah.
Well, it's more than doubling, and I actually do think that I do agree with Councillor Whip. I think we should be less acquiescent in our response, and certainly I know that we did a response to the NPPF. There were two killer points in it, really, that kibosh us and our aspirations for this area. One is the removal by the Labour government of the urban uplift, which means that where all the infrastructure and things to do with cities, where you'd obviously put more houses and intensify use in cities, they are on smaller targets. It's curious that those places are probably most likely to have Labour MPs, their targets are less. And the other thing that kiboshes us is the definition of viability. So in the Combe Neighbourhood Plan, we put forward lots and lots of different sites. None of them were massive, but they all would have been useful contributions. And we were told, some of them are not viable in the definition of what viable is, i.e. making a nice, hefty profit for the developer. And those are the two things that make delivery on brownfield sites nearly impossible in Pendle, and it is a terrific worry that, and in fact we don't have any grey belt, that the green belt and green fields is where we will be looking if we are forced to do 333. I do feel that we should do some governmental lobbying about the urban uplift and the definition of viability. And also the vast expense of being in a continual plan-making process. Poor Mr. Watson, it must be absolutely soul-destroying to be constantly nearly there and then not there, and nearly there and then not there. My sympathy with him and his department is massive, and they've done a superb job. And actually, this local plan that's coming for examination, I think is superb, and it's just such a shame that it's not going to last, only then to be taken over by a combined authority. We should be doing more about it. I really do feel we should be writing to the government.
And those numbers could go even higher, to my understanding. So
really?
I hope not, but David.
I think probably especially if they start to fall behind on that 1.5 million houses in 5 years, which they're likely to within the first year or two. I think it's right. We should join forces with other northern councils which have ridiculous targets. Our neighbours, Burnley, for example, another doubling, tripling of their targets. These people they don't understand the way the northern housing market works. Viability is an issue, availability of sites. We don't have grey belts anywhere. We don't disused things halfway through on the way to the countryside. We just don't have those resources to do. We're going through a revamp of the Combe Neighbourhood Plan now. because obviously we've got one eye on the fact that we need to identify more sites. And yes, we had a lot rejected last time round, but we know that there are small developers who'd be willing to do that. And they might take a smaller margin because it keeps them in business. You don't necessarily have to have the big boys all the time going, well, I'll cherry pick this one and I'll go for that big greenfield site and you can't turn me down now because you're falling behind already. So I think joining forces with neighbouring councils across the whole of the north is something we should do. If the government hears enough voices, they might actually listen. And, you know, I mean, when I drive into Manchester or Leeds or something like that, you just see vast tracts of brownfield land on the outskirts there. And you think to yourself, they are the sites, they are for commuting into the town, into the city centre. And they've got infrastructure, they've got buses, trains, they've got everything. You know, they're the places to build the bigger developments and to put those things in place. And, you know, why the government chose the route it does, who knows. I mean, one of the things we touched on earlier was about the sites Pendle has. We've got this myriad of little spaces here, there and everywhere. And as Hanif said, you know, residents may wish to buy them when we say don't build on them, but perhaps we should be proactively identifying ones where you could do little spot developments here and there. You know, again, we're trawling around with local knowledge and encourage to say, what about this? Let's talk to the person that owns that. Does Pendle own that? Does a private person own that? Let's talk to them and be proactive. And that way, we won't be surprised when Paul O'Neill and John Holt and that like, they've got to say, well, greenfield outside Barnoldswick, greenfield outside Cone, greenfield everywhere, are the places where we're going to have to volunteer sites.
And now for regeneration too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and they tick the box on regeneration as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Okay, thank you. The next item is homelessness, temporary accommodation and homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. Got Wayne first.
Thank you, Ed. The report before you all contains 4 elements. Homelessness, temporary accommodation. Unfortunately, over the last few years, homelessness cases have increased, so has the demand for homeless temporary accommodation. The report is proposing a way forward to expand our options to meet the need in this area. We also have the Local Authority Housing Fund. The Council has been granted funding to purchase 2 properties for use. One as homeless temporary accommodation and also one for Ashdown Resettlement Scheme. Third part of this report is the Pendle Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy. The Council is required by law to periodically carry out a review of homelessness in its districts and formulate a homelessness strategy. The strategy includes a number of aims and an action plan in order to achieve these aims. Executive is recommended to approve the strategy. And finally, the MIAA Homelessness Assignment Report. This is an external audit of the Homelessness Service, which has concluded with an overall assurance rating of substantial, which meaning there is a good system of internal control designed to meet the system objectives. The controls are generally being applied consistently. Executive is recommended to note the report. Thank you.
Iqbal.
Yeah, Chairman, I think it's worth mentioning, and credit goes to Wayne in particular in terms of the homelessness strategy and dealing with homeless people. But obviously, as you look on the second page of the report, point 1.1, 1.2, we talk about the severe budget pressures on the council. I mean, for example, £317,000 a year, and demand is forecasted to increase. I think it's a proactive way in terms of one of the recommendations about the council acquiring the 2 properties. A, to help reduce that level of cost to us, and B, to manage it. I mean, ultimately, we don't want anybody to be homeless in Pendle, but we are where we are as a society. And I think that the strategy addresses that, and obviously the rating that's got substantial reflects the hard work that's been in our office, so I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. I'll second that. And again, as a leader, I've been trying to lobby where possible with the district leaders, the Lancashire leaders, and also when meeting some of the ministers indirectly, because it is a big issue. It's a national issue, and you know, just continue to lobby to address some of these big issues that we've got. David.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I echo Iqbal's comments in terms of the work that's been done on this? And I would like to also commend Councillor Dorothy Lord, because Dot put a motion to Council, was it last September or December, I can't just remember which, where we set in train various actions, and I'm particularly delighted that the money that we put in the budget last month, where we created that pot for the compulsory purchase of long-term vacant properties, is enabling us to have more accommodation that can both be used for temporary housing, but also get rid of some of those rotten tooth properties that we have in neighbourhoods, and provide long-term accommodation, the possibility of more social housing for residents as well. And I think the desperate shortage of social housing is something that we can only make a modest dent upon, but nevertheless we can make a start and hopefully continue for the remaining life of Pendle Council in doing that. So I concur with what's been said. I also think that we ought to be lobbying government, lobbying our MPs, as we have done, in order to get fairer funding for homelessness provision. But I was rather dismayed when I saw the response of Oliver Ryan to our remonstrations, where he wrote a snotty letter back. Yes, that's right, snotty letter back, saying, well, you know, you're not doing it good enough in Pendle. So I'd like to sit down with Oliver Ryan and you know, have it out with it, because I think he's got completely the wrong end of the stick, and he, as an MP representing our area, ought to be actually fighting our corner and not turning around and saying you've got it wrong. So
yeah, this is a very positive step that we're taking, and I think if this could be just the start, like you know, has been mentioned, that hopefully over the years we can build this portfolio up and get more social housing. And I think that that's the key difference here, where social housing are not just like shared ownership or affordable housing. I think they're completely different kind of settings. You want proper social housing.
You keep doing us the money, you'll keep doing it.
All those in favour? Thank you. Next item is number 9, operational services, prohibited types and dangerous dogs policy. Thank you.
These recommendations go to council anyway.
Yeah, second that.
Thank you. All those in favour? So next item is number 12, exemption from contract procedures rules.
These recommendations.
Thank you. Who's second? Thank you. All those in favour? Item 13 is just for voting. Any comments? No. Item 14 is the UPSPF. Ryan?
Yeah, so the purpose of the report is that government have announced a year full single extension year of the fund, but it's a kind of drip feed information to us, and it seems like the programme year will start on the 1st of April. We probably won't have sign-off from government or the funds be released to us on day one, so it's just a case of when does it come forward. Based on what we know, what is coming slowly out, the combined authorities think it could perhaps be May when you get sign-off and we get government funds released. The problem that in an extension year is that we've got programmes that we want to continue that we're due to come to an end by the 31st of March. So if they continue and the funds aren't in place, you know, they haven't come to a stop, or they need security from us that if they are going to carry on, that they are going to get paid for their services. So the purpose of the report is just to say that we expect funds late, and are we accepting that you know, if we get to a point where we have to pay bills for projects, that we're happy to do so. We can charge costs back to the programme, start of programme year when they do come through, and most projects have been, the arrangement has been payments in arrears, so we wouldn't expect for more projects anyway to get paid out until perhaps July. So if combined authorities then, we think it's May probably is likely, then things should be in place, but it's always at risk. The government might drag the feet, things might go on longer. You might also have a risk that until things are signed off, the government might change their mind at the last minute. I think it's unlikely. And today I've received, it's a very last minute arrangement, so things are changing on a daily basis, but I received the MOU, which government have actually signed now. So I was told that it wouldn't be signed until the programme was agreed, but actually government looks like they have want to sign it off. Section 5.4 is that the funds will be released after the MOU is signed and after forecasts have been submitted. So part of that's done. I think that provides a bit of security. We are putting together the forecast with the combined authority. Again, the template for that wasn't expected to be released until the 1st of April, so it has to be collated, so you've got a delay there. The combined authority have proactively put together their own template and put that to government and had some feedback, which is, it's only happened in this past week. So hopefully, things will progress quicker than we hope, but it could still be made, and government might, drag their feet, and it could be longer. So we're just asking, if things drag on, are we happy just to drag those projects that we're hoping to continue?
Just a quick question to Gemma, please. I mean, obviously, Ryan needs to do that, maybe technically that around May time. Financially, illegally, where do we
at the moment we
stand?
have quite obviously often discussed with both council and executive. We have large amounts of funds held in different areas for some of the larger projects. A lot of those are, as we all know, delayed, so we do have quite a substantial amount in the call account that is available to us every day. So we have no problem in paying those out, and they are in our forecast. And the forecast for our cash flow does see that, obviously that funding agreement's not signed, so we don't know when the money's coming in to us. So this is already in our forecast, and doesn't show any red flag moments that we could outside the availability of funds.
And obviously, in principle, I think there is an agreement from the government, and I think when we had the discussions at national leaders, that this will be, UKSBF will definitely be extended for another year. So I think there's a very, very small risk, which I think we, there's some great work that's going on. There's a good continuation of some of the projects and some of the capital programmes that we want to deliver. So happy to move the report.
Yeah, I'll say the Chair, but I just want to make an observation. It's a good programme, no issues, but obviously there's still that 1% chance that government might change his mind. And I think we as a council need to understand what is the worst scenario. And I just want to raise it. As much as I support this, I just want to raise it. And my understanding is that if everything goes upside down, it could be £250,000 cost towards for the first quarter, which we've got to cough up. Okay, and I think councillors need to understand that. I've been made aware of this. So because obviously everything looks hunky-dory and fine, and our last 3 years, and now this is the 4th year. So that's the only reservation I have, Chair. That councillors need to understand, and as much as obviously Ryan keeps giving the source, he always keeps back to everything. It's not 100%. It's there. It's not 100%. So knowing that and knowing that the worst now it could be £250,000, I'll second you. And then then I go to the mosque and pray that we get the money in.
David.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Hanif. There is a risk, really the council's in an impossible position because you've got programmes in place, people are employed, and either you know, you stop paying them on the 31st of March, or you carry on, because what you can't do is stop all those programmes, lose everybody, and then reinvent the programmes and bring them back in for 9 months. So, it, you know, it really is an impossible position. However, the only decision for the executive is in terms of whether the council takes that risk. That's the issue on the agenda. There's a programme set out with Green against projects and so on and so forth. My understanding is that following the previous executive decision, the programme as a whole was left for group leaders to agree. And the question that I have got, given that we wanted to have a total of £420,000 for public realm work to match fund the 210,000 that we put in the council capital programme, can I have an assurance that that is incorporated within the programme that we're talking about?
As far as I'm aware, Chair, it is incorporated in the programme, and Ryan's nodding, which is always confident for me. Yes, it is.
Okay.
So just to again just clarify, obviously we've got to continue our move there. It's been seconded. Just legally, are we, you know, set up for that 1% chance if something didn't succeed? Could we be liable for the full year, or maybe just the 3 months or a month or 2 months? That the project.
You can put it into our agreements we'll provide.
Right, it's up until the funding's. Just clarifying. All those in favour?
Sorry,
No, but no, I think now that they've actually signed the MLU as well, I think that's even more guaranteed.
Yeah.
We just need to agree with Roy on that.
It's a lease renewal, women's refuge property. Sarah.
Just briefly to say, I couldn't support this more. It's such a valuable service for people who are in desperate condition. So it's wonderful that we're supporting this.
Second that. All those in favour? Got Barley.
Move the recommendation there.
Green. Martin.
Thank you, Leader. It's not very often that Barley Parish Council gets a motion at executive, but I feel that this deserves a little bit of recognition, because Barley Parish Council have done some fantastic work on the village green, investing their own money in drainage and boundary walls, and this is exactly the kind of piece of work that done by parishes and town councils that we should be celebrating. So I'd like to congratulate Barley Parish Council, and I hope that the executive will appropriately support this move to secure Barley Village Green as a community asset for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to move the recommendation. I think this is it's important, you know, that we preserve and safeguard protect our green spaces, and I think, you know, tourism and visitors, it's crucial that we look after our green spaces, especially in Barley, which is a natural area of beauty, and, you know, Pendle Hills, so yeah, crucial. David.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just refer to the late Councillor Tony Greaves. Tony was a member of the Open Spaces Society, and in the Lords he was instrumental in getting the legislation that actually allows landowners to apply themselves to get town greens registered. And I think this is the very first one that was done was actually the town green in Banolswick. And you know, Tony, when the legislation had gone through, he said, well, look, we can do this. So we were in there like a shot and got the council to do it. So we've got a track record of being proactive in this, so I very much support this. I think the corollary to getting the town green status, and there's reference in here as to how much investment the parish council has put into the land, I think the parish council ought to be taking ownership of that land, and you know they have it in perpetuity as green space, and that Pendle Council, going back to the asset management strategy, it divest itself of any responsibility for it. And just one little anecdote, we did the British road race final in a circuit around Barley several moons ago, and I have fond memories of sleeping on the village green because I was helping in a voluntary capacity in organise the infrastructure, and I recall the warm welcome that there was from villagers living the other side of the beck, who really relished our working through the night so as to put the event on and then take it down afterwards. And I don't say that in any churlish way whatsoever. They really appreciated the effort that we put in. So fond memories, and let's go on with it.
Sarah.
Councillor Whipper said what I was going to say.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Good. Oh.
Next item is the Pendle Rise CPO.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be very, very brief on this one. I think what I'd say just as a preface is this is a really good news story and a very positive next step in the redevelopment of Pendle Rise. So what we're seeking from Executive this evening is consent to confirm the compulsory purchase order. I think most members will be aware that there were 2 objections to the CPO order. Those objections have been negotiated away, which is very, very pleasing. And as such, the planning inspector has confirmed to the council there is no need for a public inquiry and no need for a written representation process. So we are able to self-determine the CPO should you wish to do so this evening. There is a timeline that's set out within the report very, very briefly. But going through the process, we'll have to publish an order if you agree this evening, and when the process is concluded, we have to take possession of the centre by August or September time. Demolition will then start later in the year and redevelopment early in 2026. I think Exec will remember that the CPO is simply a backstop position should negotiations not be successful with the tenants, the telecoms and so on and so forth. But we are making good progress with those negotiations. But we're keen to get the backstop in place and seeking your consent to confirm the CPO order this evening.
Thank you, Philip. I move the report set out. I think there's very positive news that the CPO is progressing, and the 2, we had objections from 2 organisations, and they both have withdrawn. And thank you to all to yourself, your team, Richard, Mike, the whole team, much appreciated, and hopefully this will speed up the town centre regeneration programme so we can deliver, bring in jobs and economic growth and for the whole of Pendle, and it's a benefit of the council, and part of the LGR. I think there's great potential with the other things that are based around Pendle Rise, so it's a great opportunity, and we've got to be very positive and supportive of this development.
Seconded.
Thank you. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Briefly.
Well, 3 things. Firstly, when the objections came in, I was staggered that Lancashire County Council was objecting to something which in part it was party to in terms of the funding it was putting in. Just beggars belief that the County Council could be so short-sighted. And as for Specsavers, they display a complete lack of vision in objecting to something that could only be good for their business. So I'm equally delighted that all those issues have been negotiated away, I think my prime concern, and I mentioned the 1.3 million that is being sucked into Pendle Rise and other projects as a consequence of the revenue consequences not being catered for. My main delight is that the sooner it's knocked down, the sooner we stop paying through the nose for sustaining an antiquated, out of date and due to be demolished building. So the sooner the better, and that's in the interest of everybody in Pendle.
I totally agree with you. I've made that point very clearly previously. You know, we didn't envisage the revenue costs with corn market.
No, the previous administration didn't envisage the revenue costs.
So we have Corn Market Hall, we have Pendle Rise, so, you know, the whole team, right across all the elected members, council officers, everybody's working hard on other partners as well, you know, Race Partnership, Pembroke Road, everybody's working hard, you know, at the speed, you know, fast as we can as well, to get things done. So, all those in favour? Thank you. And going forward plans. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Are you doing nothing in April? Look at the dates. You've got March and May, and there's nothing at all in April. You're April off.
Again,
I think the officers working in April.
it's per the elections.
How was it?
Thank you.